Hey guys, it's Neil from GIZGUIDEPH, and today we're looking at two of the more capable phones from late 2019 under the 11,000 peso price range. First up, we're going to look at the Vivo Y19 and the OPPO A5 2020. Now, after this, we'll see which phone is the phone for you. Alright guys, let's look at the build quality of the OPPO A5 2020 and the Y19 from Vivo. Now, if you look at them very closely, they're both made of polycarbonate and glass stick along with glass in front. So basically, it's glass front, polycarbonate frame, and glass stick back. Now, if you look at them closely, both have a very similar build. In fact, it's very hard to tell what's different. There are very few differences that we can see. The biggest one is the Vivo has a slightly smaller bezel at the bottom than the OPPO, but the OPPO has a 720p panel while the Vivo has a 1080p panel. Aside from that, the layout is very much similar. The OPPO has the volume rocker on the left along with the SIM card tray, while the Vivo has the SIM card tray on the left and the volume rocker and power button on the right. What makes a difference is at the bottom, they both have headphone jacks. They also have a speaker there, but the OPPO has a USB Type-C while the Vivo has only a micro USB. And that's it. Alright, let's look at the multimedia experience of the OPPO A5 2020 and the Vivo Y19. First up, let's look at the displays. Both of them have a large 6.50-inch IPS panels, but the Vivo has a 1080p panel while the OPPO has a 720p panel. Both of them produce very bright images with a very vibrant color, and they're both sharp. But the Vivo, being a 1080p panel, is slightly sharper when you look at it up close. So I think the winner for the display is the Vivo Y19. But that doesn't discount the 720p panel of the OPPO. In fact, the difference is really small that you really have to put them side by side before you'll see it. So I think the Vivo wins, but only by a very small margin. Alright, next up is the audio experience. Both of them have a bottom firing speaker and a 3.5mm headphone jack. The OPPO A5 2020 produces sound with very increased focus to bass. In fact, a little bit more than the Vivo. And what we noticed that when we're using our own personal headphones, it needs about 80% to drive the full capacity of the earphones. While the Y19 is also very bassy, but it's slightly more balanced compared to the OPPO, and it also uses up to 80% of volume before we can really make our earphone shine. Now for me, I think the winner for this comparison is the Vivo because of the much more balanced sound signature. It's not that a big difference, but you will be able to hear the highs, the mids, and the lows in a much more clear manner compared to the OPPO's more focus on bass. Now for microphone quality, both of them perform very well for their price, but the OPPO beats out the Vivo because it's able to record and give that much more fuller sound compared to the Vivo. In fact, there's slightly more tinginess in the Vivo's recordings whenever we compare them side by side. Let's look at the two cameras of the Vivo Y19 and the OPPO A5 2020. First up, let's look at the Vivos. It has a 16-megapixel main camera, 8-megapixel ultra-wide camera, and a 2-megapixel macro camera. In front, on the other hand, is a 16-megapixel selfie camera. Alright, next up is the OPPO's cameras. Let's look at the rear side. It has a 12-megapixel main camera, an 8-megapixel ultra-wide camera, and a 2-megapixel monochrome camera, and a 2-megapixel depth sensor. In front is an 8-megapixel selfie camera. Both phones are very capable and they were built with versatility in mind. In fact, I think in almost every situation, I'll be able to shoot whatever I want with either phone. But the Vivo has a new macro camera, which allows you to shoot very, very short distances from the lens, so you can really get up close and with really sharp results. Although the Vivo has a 60-megapixel sensor compared to the OPPO's 12-megapixel main sensor, the OPPO is able to compensate because it has a monochrome camera and a macro camera. instead of the Vivo's only 3 cameras. Now, the OPPO is able to shoot 190 degrees with its ultra-wide camera compared to the Vivo's 120 degrees camera. So that's just 1 degrees. It doesn't really matter much in the long run. And I think the winner for the whole versatility aspect is OPPO itself, because the OPPO has 4 cameras. It means I can shoot in 4 different situations. That is the standard wide, and then the ultra wide, and then the macro. And of course, it's the only phone of the 2 that has night mode, which means I can shoot in really dark situations with still subjects and still be able to shoot very clean images with sharp results. Alright guys, now we've uploaded all the pictures from the Alright guys, now we've uploaded all the pictures from the OPPO A5 2020 and the Vivo Y19 into our computer, and we've sorted them out and we're looking at them side by side. Now, as you can see, it will be flashed in front of you. The Vivo is significantly sharper and the colors pop out more. Aside from that, if you look closely at the clouds and at the building in the middle, you'll see that the exposure of the clouds is a lot better compared to the OPPO. The OPPO, the whites of the sky is already blown out, while the Vivo is able to maintain the exposure all throughout the image very well, along with incredible sharpness and very vibrant color. Especially for this price point, this is very good. Vivo, you've done a very good job with your camera in daylight. Next up, we're looking at the ultra-wide camera. As you can see, surprisingly, the Vivo has slightly more field of view compared to the OPPO. Now, these are not one-to-one, but again, it's very similar to the processing we had in the main camera. The buildings and the sky and the clouds are better exposed on the Vivo compared to the OPPO. And the color is much more vibrant and much more real to life than the OPPO. The OPPO is kind of yellowish, and the colors are not as bright or vibrant as the Vivo. Next one, we're looking at the roadway. And similar story, the Vivo is just significantly and noticeably sharper with more vibrant color. And again, the clouds are more exposed better here. And the colors are real to life with the Vivo compared to the OPPO. And as you can see, if you look a little bit at the bottom right corner, you can really see the windows on the bottom right corner, while on the OPPO, it's already basically in shadow. So again, the Vivo is doing pretty well even in this situation. Alright, now we're looking at the Red Bull statue on top of the SM Aura. As you can see, the Vivo is significantly sharper again, but the colors of the Vivo is more vibrant except for the red statue itself. The red statue had their shadows raised up too much and it brightened the image, the statue too much, that it made it look artificial. The OPPO wins in the proper exposure in this situation, but generally, again, the Vivo has a sharper image and a more vibrant color. It just missed the shadow areas in this particular situation. Alright, next up is the close-up of the leaf. As you can see, this is very close up with the main camera, and generally both of them have a very shallow depth of field, meaning only a very small area of the leaf is in focus. It's the middle of the leaf. As you can see, they're very similar, but surprisingly, I prefer the image of the OPPO this time. It's not as sharp as the one in the Vivo, but it looks a little bit more natural to me. The Vivo image is slightly greener than I would like than the real life image. Also the yellow, it's just too bright. The color here is too vibrant for the real life. Doesn't look real. Alright, now we move into indoors. As you can see, we're looking at the better images from all Vivo. The reds, the yellows, everything is accurate but a little bit more vibrant compared to the OPPO. If you look at the cotton on sign, the red is very dark in the OPPO image, but the Vivo is very bright and very colorful. And it surprisingly, even though there's a bit of noise in both, the Vivo remains sharp. Alright, now we're looking at low light images. The first image is of a streetway using the main camera. And unfortunately, this is where OPPO wins. It's slightly sharper than the Vivo and slightly better colors compared to the Vivo. The OPPO is able to maintain sharpness and color even though there is an increased amount of grain, while the Vivo is struggling with the noise and the sharpness of the image. I will give the first low light image to OPPO. Next image. Now this is a low light shot, and I am looking at, if you look at the tree in the middle, you will see that the tree is more visible in the OPPO. A lot of leaves are more visible compared to the OPPO. Also the building at the back, you can see more detail inside the windows of the buildings from the OPPO shot compared to the Vivo shot. And as you can see, the OPPO's is able to control the overexposed or light sources better than the Vivo in this situation. Okay, then we're looking at the last low light image from the main camera, but it's only coming from the OPPO because only the OPPO has night mode. And as you know, night mode uses AI to do a long exposure like wherein takes multiple images and stacks them together and lets the AI algorithm take care of the image quality. Now the OPPO is able to produce a very decent night mode for its price. It's not, as you can see, the overexposed areas are well taken care of. They're not as exposed, as bright or as overexposed as the standard night shot, auto shot, but you can see a lot more detail and you can really notice the difference between the standard auto mode. It's also a lot cleaner. So I give props to OPPO for providing night mode at such a low price point. Okay, now we're looking at the selfie camera in daylight. Again, it's a similar story as the main camera. The Vivo just has better resolution. It's just way sharper and the colors are a little bit warmer than I would like. The OPPO here has the better white balance. Got Neil's skin tone properly. But the Vivo is noticeably sharper, although there's a green tinge on the building. And the overall image is a lot greener than I would like. And the OPPO is better color. So I guess it's a tie. The Vivo sharper, but the OPPO has a better color reproduction. Now we're looking at the indoor selfie. And it's pretty much night and day here. Because the OPPO, although performs decently, the light sources or lamps or fluorescent lights or whatever source of light is overexposed, while the Vivo maintains its sharpness, its color, while maintaining those light sources. The image is well exposed. So I think the winner for the indoor selfie is the Vivo. Alright, next up is another indoor shot with bokeh mode. Apparently the Vivo does not have bokeh mode, while the OPPO has bokeh mode. Now if you look closely at the OPPO shot, you will see that the edges of Neil's shirt, it's doing pretty well. It's able to detect the edges pretty well, except for that his right shoulder, it's a little bit off. But generally this edge detection is very good for a phone that's priced under 11,000 pesos. Kudos to OPPO for providing very good edge detection and portrait mode at 11,000 pesos. Alright, now we're looking at the low light selfies. As you can see, the Vivo is noticeably sharper with better color reproduction and better exposure, while the OPPO is softer, and because of noise reduction, it softened Neil's face a little bit. Another concern here is that the Vivo wasn't able to control the exposure of the screen behind Neil, so the OPPO isn't able to properly expose that screen, while the Vivo was able to expose the screen properly, so it doesn't overpower the scene at all. So generally, the Vivo is sharper, better color reproduction, and the exposure is okay. Alright guys, we're looking at the video quality of the OPPO A7 2020 and the Vivo Y19. Now looking right off the bat, only the OPPO has 4K video recording. It's the only 1080p recording with any form of stabilization, while the Vivo only has up to 1080p without stabilization. So the OPPO is significantly sharper, while the Vivo has a better color rendition. But because the OPPO is capable of shooting 4K and it has 1080p with stabilization, I think the OPPO wins in this category. Alright guys, now we're looking at the selfie video footage from the OPPO A5 and the Vivo Y19. As you can see,
Carrying two phones at the same time.
the OPPO has the
Doing,
wider field of view,
walking,
but the
selfie
Vivo
video.
is significantly sharper and I guess more color accurate. It's also able to control overexposed areas much better compared to the OPPO. So I think in terms of video, selfie videos, the OPPO wins. What do you guys think? Alright guys, now we're going to look at the performance of the OPPO A5 2020 and the Vivo Y19. Let's look at the specs first. The Vivo Y19 has a 2 GHz 64-bit Helio P65 octa-core processor using the 12nm manufacturing process, while the OPPO A5 2020 has a 2 GHz Snapdragon 665 octa-core processor using the 11nm process. Both have 4 GB of RAM, while they can be configured up to 128 GB of internal storage. Only the OPPO has UFS 2.1, meaning it has ultra-fast 2.1 storage. Now, if we're going to put the screenshots of their Geekbench right in front of you, and as you can see, the Vivo is able to perform slightly better compared to the OPPO in both the single core and multi-core scores. Now, in real life usage, this is barely noticeable. Basically, when you're navigating through the OS, trying to open apps, or browsing through the settings, or surfing the web, or playing YouTube videos or Spotify, it's generally smooth. Both of them are nearly identical in performance. You couldn't tell that there was any difference at all. What you will notice is when you are playing NBA 2K20, you'll see that the 1080p display of the Vivo takes a little bit of a toll on the smoothness of the NBA gameplay, but this is very minor. So you'll notice that the OPPO is slightly smoother when you're playing the game, but generally it's very similar. It's just that the Vivo has a 1080p display, so it's a little bit it's being a little bit stuttery in some situation, but otherwise they perform well for under 11,000 pesos. Alright guys, now let's look at the UI of both phones. Both of them are based on Android 9.0 Pie. The OPPO has the ColorOS 6, while the Vivo has the FunTouch OS 9.2. Now, both of them feature very clean, very easy to pick up UI. But if you look a little closer, you will find that both of them have very minimal pre-installed apps. They both have Lazada. And then there's very little other pre-installed apps here. You can basically remove it if there were any. Also, I think the OPPO is the slightly better UI, simply because when I'm navigating through the settings, I think I'm able to find the setting I want to change faster on the OPPO than on the Vivo. I just find it hard to look for the different settings in the Vivo more than I would when I'm using the OPPO. So that's about it, guys. Both phones also include some software optimizations so that the experience is better even after you've been using the phone for a while. Aside from that, you will find that they have their own interpretation of gesture controls. So depending on the phone, you may have to learn them a little bit. There's a learning curve, but eventually they're both pretty easy to use, and when you have them, it's very great, especially when you're in a hurry and trying to navigate the system. Alright guys, now we're looking at added security. Both have fingerprint sensors at the back, and both front-facing cameras support face unlock. Now, the fingerprint sensor of both phones are able to quickly detect my finger and then unlock the phone very quickly, while the face unlock is able to detect my face even in low light and unlock the phone also as quick. Now, they're not as secure as the ones on the higher end flagships, but it's for 11,000 pesos, this is as good as you can get. Both phones have 5,000 milliampere battery, where the OPPO has a 720p panel and the Vivo has a 1080p panel. So you will see very minimal difference, but the OPPO will edge out the Vivo in terms of battery life. In fact, we're getting around 2 days of battery life with the OPPO and slightly less for the Vivo. The OPPO has USB Type-C and a 10 watts fast charger, while the Vivo has micro USB but has a dual engine 18 watts charger, meaning that the Vivo, even though it has micro USB, is able to charge the battery faster. In fact, it charges around from 0 to 100% in 2 hours and 30 minutes, while the OPPO, we would need to charge it for more than 3 hours. Alright guys, let's talk about the verdict. Which phone is for you? Is it the OPPO A5 or is it the Vivo Y19? To be honest guys, this is a very difficult comparison. Both of them performed very similarly. Although the Vivo performed slightly better in terms of the benchmarks. It's also the one with the 1080p panel. Aside from that, even though it has only 3 cameras compared to the 4 cameras of the OPPO, the shots in daylight and indoors, and both selfie and main cameras, the Vivo just performed a little bit better. The images were sharper, the colors were more vibrant and punchy. And of course, in terms of battery life, they're very similar, but it has the 18 watts fast charger. So overall, I think the Vivo is the winner because of the display, 1080p display, because of the slightly better performance, because of the fast charging, and because of the slightly more balanced audio headphone experience from the Vivo. On the other hand, if you want the more versatile 4-camera setup, if you want a 720p panel, and if you want USB Type-C, I think the OPPO is for you. Alright guys, what do you guys think? Do you prefer the Vivo or do you prefer the OPPO? Personally, I prefer the Vivo, but again, it depends on your needs. And thank you guys for watching. This is Neil from GIZGUIDE.com. I hope you liked our video. If you want to know more about tech, if you want to get news and reviews, you can visit us at GIZGUIDE.com. You can contact us if you have questions in our social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And I hope to see you in the next video. Bye-bye.